Okay. Here we go again, dipping back into The Secret of Light. We're going to be reading starting on starting on page 230 at the section called The Two Opposite Electrical Conditions. And I imagine we'll split the reading between the three of us who are not driving. I will read the first part. It's just a couple pages. The two opposite electric conditions. This zero universe of equilibrium demands two opposed conditions in order to simulate that which our senses interpret for motion and change. These two needed conditions are plus and minus equilibrium, positive and negative electricity. Figure 17. Plus zero means a credit of pressure borrowed from the universal equilibrium to compress a large volume into a small volume. Minus zero means an equal expansion to balance the borrowed compression. $1,000 borrowed from a bank is a plus condition of credit, which is balanced by an equal debit of $1,000. The central zero represents the bank. The extended zeros represent credit and debit. Both are equal but opposite. A credit of $1,000 equals zero. When the credit is paid in part or in full, the debit is proportionally voided simultaneous with the credit. These two opposite conditions of credit and debit correspond with the two opposite conditions of compression and expansion in nature, upon which motion is dependent. When an equilibrium pressure is divided into opposite conditions, from the zero from which both are extended, motion between the two becomes imperative. They must interchange with each other to void their unbalanced conditions. This is the principle of the electric current. Figure 18 represents a room of equal pressure. Two tanks in it are connected with a tube and petcock. By pumping all the air out of one tank into the other, the two plus-minus conditions have been established, which make motion imperative. Nature always borns each opposite from the other in this manner. By opening the petcock, an outward explosion will take place in the plus tank. An inward explosion of equal potential will take place in the evacuated tank. The plus tank will discharge part of its compressed condition to charge the minus one. The electric battery is the same in principle. Figure 19. In nature, the discharged radiation, which explodes outward from the sun, simultaneously explodes inward as gravitation. I sort of want to propose that we just skip the bank analogy. I think it's confusing and potentially even inaccurate. It's not as helpful as the charged air, compressed air analogy, in my opinion. But
hey, Beej, sometimes the sound is doing a thing. I wonder if you would mute, please. Thanks. Yeah, the bank thing was confusing.
Yeah. I don't get the part where it says a credit of $1,000 equals zero. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, say we should skip it. When I was reading this,
I want to say a thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, will you read the very first sentence again?
Sure. This zero universe of equilibrium demands two opposed conditions in order to simulate that which our senses interpret for motion and change.
Okay, so that became something for me that I've been working with, which it's a practice that I kind of cobbled together from lots of different teachers, including one of my teachers of meditative self-inquiry, and also from Rupert Spira and other mystic traditions. And so I've been playing with, like, there's perception, or like what I'm aware of. For instance, seeing, like there's the experience of sight, my sensing, but let's just to simplify, let's say seeing. Okay, there's seeing happening, and that's primary, that's first. And after the seeing happens, we come in and tell the story, I am seeing. So there's the sense of self, the I am, that's like loaned to or coupled with just the direct experience of seeing, of what I'm aware of. And when those two are like separate concepts, when there's the seeing and the I am that's separate, that's added to it, that creates the experience of separation. And so I've been playing with that, like direct experience of seeing, sensing, adding the I, and experiencing how that creates separation. And then after that experience, so to bring it to our practice of inquiring together, that's sort of like with the thought I, and then without the thought. So this other part is just, if there's just the sensing, like if I just stay with the sensing itself, without taking it personally, without making an I that is doing the sensing, there's just the experience of sensing. And it takes me to, like, it feels like a phrase that comes up for me sometimes in inquiry is the heart of creation. It takes me directly to the heart of creation, which is like just connected, just like they're like a direct knowing if there's no separation. So anyway, I just wanted to share that really pinged for me, and I was like, as you were sharing, I was listening to all of that about the bank and the pressure, like through that lens of like, oh, I'm directly in the heart of that experience. So felt meaningful to share. I hope it's meaningful to hear, even though it's not super directly like connected to what he's talking about. It feels like it is experientially. So.
Cool, thanks, Beej. Well, I mean, as we continue, if there's, ways that, or if there's insight that comes to you for how to connect it more directly, I'd love to hear that. I did enjoy your telling, but I am not connecting it to what we just read yet. So, yeah. How about William, Natalie, either of you want to say or ask anything before we move on? Okay.
I'm happy to read.
Great. Please do.
Cause of the universal pulse beat. Matter and space constitute the two conditions necessary for interchange of motion, diagrammed in figures 18 and 19, with one distinguishing difference. That difference is that the two conditions represented by the tanks of the compressed and expanded air and the two cells of the battery of the electric battery are equal in volume, while bodies of matter and their surrounding space are unequal in volume. The expanded condition of space is millions of times greater in volume than the compressed condition of its centering body. This explains the seeming mystery of gravitation and radiation, which causes solid objects to fall toward the earth and gases to rise toward space. In the electric battery, the interchange between the two pressure conditions can void both in an explosive flash by a short circuit if the wire connecting both cells is heavy enough. If a small wire connects both cells, the interchange takes time to complete the voidance. Each condition gives to the other in installments, for the wire is not big enough to void both conditions instantly. The consequent giving and re-giving by the two opposite pressures constitute the oscillations of the electric current. Electric interchange by installments is measured and recorded by waves, and the time element of those recordings of interchange are wave frequencies. They constitute the pulse beat of the electric current. When an electric wire pulses with wave frequencies in an electric current, we say that it is a live wire. When it stops pulsing because the current is disconnected, we say that the wire is dead, for it no longer pulses. All nature pulses in measured frequencies with the heartbeat of the universal electric current, as evidenced by universal breathing inward toward bodies and outward towards space. When breathing is switched off in man's body by the cessation of interchange between the two opposite pressure conditions of matter, we say that the man is dead. By solving the mystery of installment interchange between bodies and space, one can more fully comprehend the fact that neither pulse beat, breathings, nor wave frequencies of interchange have any relation whatsoever to life, for they relate only to the principle by means of which life or energy is manifested by motion. The first step in solving this mystery lies in the principle by means of which matter and space become unequal in volume. Figure 20 represents the electric battery with the line AB dividing the two pressure conditions as the equilibrium of both. This line represents a static equator, a plane of rest from which both opposite conditions are extended at right angles as a dynamic equator, line CD. Figure 21 represents static and dynamic equators, or magnetic and electric, at 90 degrees from each other. As the two opposed conditions which extend from these planes of rest are equal, the lines of force which connect both are as symmetrical to both diameters as though reflected by mirrors placed at right angles to each other. Such symmetry belongs to the cube and sphere alone. Figure 22 represents the electric battery with the negative cell much larger than the positive cell. The static and dynamic equators will still be at right angles to each other, but the static equator will not be in the middle. It will be much nearer the positive pole and will be curved because lines of force which record the measure of interchange between the two opposite pressures can be symmetrical to the dynamic equator only and not to the static equator. Such symmetry belongs to the radial universe of cone sections. All dynamic equators are radial, and all lines of force of conic symmetry are forever changing to record the forever changing potential of dynamic equators. Should I keep going? maybe another
I think so.
paragraph.
Yeah, I
huh?
think so.
Figure 23 illustrates this principle, which forms spheres and creates the illusion which makes heavy objects seem to be attracted radially toward the earth and tenuous matter thrust radially away from it. Line AB shows the curvature of the static equator, which causes the dynamic equator to expand at its negative end and contract at its positive end into the radii of a cone. The outward thrust of radiative pressures would curve the base of the cone, thus produced to correspond with the curvature of its static equator, AB. Figure 24 represents a bar magnet which has been divided into the two opposite pressure conditions of this electric universe by coiling a charged wire around the bar of steel, thus forming two opposed plus and minus electrical vortices with intensities measured at poles. Two nails of equal weight are suspended to these poles. It is not magnetism, however, which picks up these nails. It is the electric vortices which pick them up, for the vortices are still effective upon that steel bar, even though the electrically challenged wire has been removed. It is the whirlpool motion of the electric vortex which performs the work of lifting those nails and not the stillness of the poles of magnetic light. If the bar magnet is enlarged at one end, it becomes a cone. The division into the two opposed conditions will still be equal as in figure 25, but the volume will be so large in one as compared with the other that the nail, which the positive end will still pick up, cannot be lifted by the negative end unless the nail is ground to a fine powder. The negative end will then lift the same weight in total, but only by dividing the nail over the whole volume. Before this principle is applied to matter and space, it is necessary to correct the general impression that the Earth is a magnet.
Actually, I
By-
think this is probably a good break point.
Okay.
Because we get into, yeah, let's pause there. Man, I mean, reading through this, it takes, well, in my case, it takes reading through it a lot of times to start forming a picture in my mind. The diagrams are helpful, but they only point at these dynamic, some of these things are kind of moving dynamic examples he's talking about. And, obviously the diagrams are fixed. So yeah, I don't know exactly how to get into it, but I'm curious if any of that landed at all.
I mean, I feel like I kind of get it in relation to the shapes, the drawings, Okay. But does that translate? Actually, what came up for me is curiosity around electroculture. Have you all heard of this practice?
Mm-mm.
I saw a brief video today about what someone is practicing in their garden. And this is like a thing that people are trying now. So they took, I think it was 14mm copper wire and wrapped it in a spiral around a stick, maybe a piece of bamboo or something. And then at the top, there's like the wire comes off the stick and coils into like a cone. And then you put this, you anchor the stick in the ground. And the idea is that the coil is like collecting electric energy from the air and transmitting it into the soil via the copper wire. And it's like nourishing, potentially remineralizing the soil. And I just saw that video today and it popped in when I was reading this and I was like, I wonder if those things are connected.
Yeah, Fascinating. I have seen images of that. People doing that. I didn't know it was called electroculture. That's cool. I mean, yeah, I imagine there's like a bunch of people who are doing really interesting stuff with like, you know, with like gardening and nature and natural phenomenon that that I feel like is all connected. Like they're all tuning into these patterns, these invisible patterns that that underlies matter, and figuring out how to tap those patterns and use them for, you know, for productive ends. Victor Schauberger and water vortices and stuff, and then like Steiner and the anthroposophical movement, like all these folks had like these really, I mean, if you look at their technology, the applied technology, it's like, it seems really esoteric and strange, but like they were tapped in. I really do feel like they knew how to apply this, you know, these patterns that we're talking about right now to growing things and, you know, being on the earth in a productive way. It's really cool.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, William.
Like potentially a fantastically novice question, but sometimes asking these is helpful for stuff to land. I'm just looking at figure 24, and according to the way it's described, do we get the sense that because of the vortical, I'm not sure of the words exactly, because of the, essentially if you move nail from one or the other side towards the center, is it that in the center it will drop away? That is the place where there is a convergence and middle point of sorts?
The motion that Walter Russell ascribes to being the mover of the nails, the vortices, are the most active at the ends of the magnet. So there's
So I guess
literally a still point at the center of the magnet that has zero vorticular motion.
Okay, so my sense that if the nail were perfectly in the middle, it would drop is something you're in agreement with?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that it's pretty simple. There's a lot of like description and analogy in these sections, and you know, that's helpful. But I think that the point he's getting across is the main point that I think is worth underscoring is the in matter and space, matter and space are equal in charge, but they're incredibly different. They're incredibly unequal in volume. So the part that drives that home the most clearly is when he talks about the sun. I think he talks about the sun. So the sun is the matter of the cube sphere system. So the sun is the matter portion, and the sun is surrounded by space. And there's a particular volume of space that belongs to the sun, that's paired with the sun. And it's a cubic shape. And it's millions of times larger than the sun. And space is preponderantly negatively charging, and the sun is preponderantly positively charging. So the charge of the sun is equal to the charge of the space that surrounds it. But the space that surrounds it is diffuse. You know, it's like the charge is spread out over a volume that's 1,000,000 times larger than the volume of the sun. So that's the main point. And I don't know if I said that in a way that is clear.
So I'm just going back to something you said a while ago. So are you then conceptualizing our sun, our logos, in its own cubic metaphysical container?
Yeah. Yep.
And then our solar system is the, are we saying that the solar system is a particular cubic metaphysical container of which the sun is the main logos, or the logos?
Yes.
Logo?
Yeah, all the matter,
Cool.
contained within the solar system is basically an extension of the sun. It's part of the it's a part of the matter half of the matter space duality. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that's helpful about this is like when we think of the sun, we think of it as again, it's like we think of it as a separate object, which of course it hasn't, it has describability as an object, but it's fundamentally paired with an equal charge, but much larger volume of space as a system. So the sun couldn't exist without its surrounding space. And that to me was really profound. Like I never thought, I never thought of that specifically, but then it started to leak into like how I think about matter in general and the space that surrounds it. And it's a real game changer to realize that there's two halves to the creation. For anything to be created in our material universe, it's a part of the two pressure conditions of space and matter, which is cool.
Okay, I want to say something else. So again, this may not be super exactly connected, to what he's saying, but pointing to the experience that I'm having. And feel free to tell me if like these comments aren't landing, but it's meaningful to me to share. So I really appreciate that piece that you shared, Aaron, of like the clarification of, just a simplification of equal charge, but not equal volume.
Correct.
You said.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I was just experiencing that, and one of the things that we were talking about in Lou's study recently is like as sub logos or sub logoi, sub, I don't know, I forget how many subs we have. We are suns. We are sun bodies, in a way. And so I was just applying that to this body as well. And what that was doing for me too was like being with that, again, the I, the sense of self, that is somehow magnetized to the body. That, like, again, this is a concept that I get from a lot of mystic teachers, that the I am, the sense of self, has some sort of magnetism or something like that to the body, to identify as a body. And that is part of the mechanism of free will, that like it gives us the opportunity to believe the illusion. Like as soon as it's like the I, and then this is what we believe the I to be. So anyway, yeah, I was just with the way that this body is always surrounded by the space, and both are ever present, both are equal in my experience, and the sense of I is somehow magnetized to this body, and that is what creates the illusion, but it's not necessarily true, that this body is what I am. There's like an in-between, there's a play between this body and the experience that is like the space that surrounds the body, and like the truth is like in between the two. The like there's awareness and there's what I'm aware of, and there's a way that those two meet, and that's really cool and profound to me.
There's a way which two meet? Which two things meet?
Like the sun body, or like my body, and the space that I'm always in.
Yeah.
So like the awareness, we could say, the capacity to be aware that seems to be resting within the body, and what I'm aware of that seems to be external or in the space that surrounds the body.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness and what I'm aware of, which may not be the same as, you know, sun and the space, but at least seem paired to me, seem to be holding the same function. And the truth is in the balancing. And another thing that keeps pinging for me is like, what he's pointing to is the resolving of the paradox. Like paradoxes exist in a reality of believing in separation, which seems to happen when identity arises. And identity, it seems to be, is just the sense of self paired with an experience. So like what I'm aware, okay, so awareness plus what I'm aware of seem to be meshed.
We're losing you, Beach.
Okay. I'll mute myself.
Okay. Maybe when you get a better signal, we can pick up where you left off. It was interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to riff off of BJ's sort of metaphysics and the direct experience of awareness and how awareness is magnetized to the body and all that stuff. We certainly could. I also feel dedicated to trying to like unpack the concepts we're reading right now. So I could go either way. There's a lot. I was really stimulated by what you were saying, BJ. There's a lot I feel like we could riff on there. And I'm not sure how much of a sidetrack it would take us down, or if it matters. I'm open to suggestions. William?
Could I potentially not necessarily carry this too far forward, but just respond to that with one sentence that
Please
came
do.
up for me?
Yeah.
Which was that what I'm hearing coming through BJ is potentially that this body is magnetized awareness. No, that's okay. It'll be about as lost as not relevant. Well, it sort of is, but never mind.
I'll just say that resonates for me.
Moo, are there things from what I just read that you want to pull out?
Well, I pulled out the thing about the volume differential and the play between matter and space. Matter being the realm of the spheres and space being the realm of the cubes. That's the main thing. That's the main thing I wanted to pull out.
I did appreciate
Will you say it again?
stating that, but
Sorry.
Yes, yeah. I can say it again. The
matter being the realm of the, yeah.
Do you want to try, BJ? No. So the pairing of matter and space and the differential of volume between the two, and matter being the realm of spheres and space being the realm of cubes, of the cube. And okay, and so another thing, so on the cube and the sphere, something you have to understand is that basically, like, if you guys have a model of the logos and how the logos fractals, if you've built a model of that, understanding how like the primal logos creates the galactic logoi, The galactic logoi generate the suns generate all the mind, body, spirit complexes, right? And like that. Well, it's similar with these geometries. They're fractal, right? So like the solar system has a massive cubic area of space that surrounds it, but within that, every planet has a cubic field surrounding it. Every person, every tree, every atom, every photon, every system of light, every coherent system of light, every logos, every sub-logos has its own field, its own cubic field. And they're all nested and they're all moving, And one of the most profound paradoxes, which is shared by this teaching and by the law of one, is something along the lines of like, there's only one center to all the cubes and all the spheres. There's only one. They're all like God's awareness is ever present in every minute portion of space and matter. You know what I mean? Like the center that centers all of these systems is the same center. We all share the same center. It's the point at which it's the creation point. It's the point between capital L light, the infinite light, and all that gets manifested. So it's very difficult to talk about. It seems paradoxical. It seems like it doesn't hold up to our physical laws, but somehow the center of all systems is the same, or is at least has access to all the information. It's the way everything's connected, basically. It's the way that when Ra says the one infinite creator is whole and complete and perfect in every portion of its creation. Every minorest portion of the creation contains the whole thing, and that's the same thing I'm trying to get at here. So all these these shapes we're talking about, they're not fixed in space. They don't they're constantly changing, and they're all interrelated with one another, and it's a very dynamic system. So. All right, let's continue reading. William, do you want to pick up where we left off at before this principle is applied to matter?
Okay. Before this principle is applied to matter and space, it is necessary to correct the general impression that the Earth is a magnet. By referring to the bar magnet pictured in figure 24, it can be seen that its poles alone express gravity. The Earth, on the contrary, expresses gravity at its center. Figure 26. The Earth is formed between magnetic gaps of its wave as all bodies are formed. If the two bar magnets are placed so that negative and positive ends are near each other, that still point, which we call the center of gravity, will evidence itself between the two ends. If iron filings are placed in this gap, conditions of gravity similar to those of the Earth will be found there. Gravity will end and radiation will begin at that center. Nails will fall toward it from any direction, as heavy objects do on Earth, and compass needles will follow the vertical directions of lines of force which extend towards its poles. The analogy between the unequal battery cells and bar magnets is now sufficiently complete to compare them with matter and space. In figure 28, two bar magnets have been fanned out into cones. The weight which the positive end will pick up as a solid has to be finally divided in order for the expanded volume of the negative end to pick it up. The essential difference between the two opposed pressure conditions of the electric battery and the two of matter and space is that in the battery, the opposed potentials are equal because the volumes are equal. In the universal battery of matter and space, the two opposed conditions are conspicuously unequal. The resultant high and low potential contrast each other so violently that solid matter falling toward the high potential of the compressed condition must be divided into vapors and gases before the same substance will fall toward the low potential of the expanded condition. A solid bar of iron will fall radially toward the Earth because both are high potential compressed solids. If divided sufficiently by vaporizing it, that same bar of iron will fall radially toward the heavens. Gravity and radiativity are opposite pressure conditions of the same thing. Both of these pressure conditions are in every creating thing. Every creating thing can expand to lower its potential or can contract to raise it. Like conditions seek like conditions to find balance. Creating things changing their compressed conditions to expanded conditions must move to find balance in like conditions. That is the sole cause of two-way motion. Every potential has a balancing potential position somewhere in the universe. The desire to find that position is in every creating thing, and any restraint exerted to prevent it from moving to find its balancing potential can be measured as weight. The cause of the radial universe, which constitutes matter and space, lies in the inequality of its two opposite pressure conditions, both as to volume and potential. The cause of the universal pulse beat and the breathing which motivates the manifestation of life in every creating thing lies also in this inequality. All creating things pulse and breathe just as organic life pulses and breathes. But that is not life, it is but motion. The two opposite electric directions. The universe is dual. The still magnet universe of reality and the dynamic electric radial two-way universe of illusion, which extends from the static universe at an angle of 90 degrees. In the dynamic electric universe, there are two conditions, inward and out radially from a still point of magnetic light, capital L, to still planes of magnetic light, capital L. All motion within magnetic wave fields is controlled by the creator, figures 29-30. Quote from the divine Iliad, "For behold, I am within all things, centering them, and I am without all things, controlling them." The inward radial direction is north, the compressive direction of gravity, which multiplies potential by compressing light waves radially into smaller volumes of greater frequencies. The outward radial direction is south, the expansive direction the expansive direction of radiation, which divides potential by expanding light waves into larger volumes of lesser frequencies. The two directions of the static, figure 31, the two directions of the static universe are east and west. They are static because they are spherical. They follow curved planes of unchanging equipotential pressures, such as the contour of the Earth or Sun, or of the orbits of planes or floating clouds. East and west do not oppose each other. Each arrives at its own starting point without change of potential, figure 32. North and south, on the contrary, diametrically oppose one another. They are constantly changing. They seek opposite directions, each passing through the other in opposite spiral lanes, each interchanging with the other as it passes, each voiding the other through that interchange, and each becoming the other because of it, figure 33. East-west spherical planes from the axes of light waves from which the dynamic universe extends its gyroscopic wave radially at amplitudes of 90 degrees, and also its other gyroscopic octave tones at the varying degrees of pressure where the elements of matter are formed. East-west spherical planes are also the fulcrums of wave levers which curve gravity as they pump high potential into low to expand solids into the gases of space. and low potential into high to compress light waves into the solids of Earth. Figure 34. Incandescent suns of white hot light are born from cold black darkness, and cold dark space is born from white hot suns.
That's great.
All suns are...
It's a good place to stop. So the other thing that I think is really helpful for us to explore and talk about and try to understand is the dynamic equator and the static equator, north versus south, north-south direction versus east-west direction. So I'm just going to talk a little bit and see if I can expose some what he's talking about here. This is different than a map. This is different than a car, like a flat plane with north being up and south being down. This is a universal system of directions. I don't know why he chose north and south and east and west. This is another one of those semantic choices he made that makes it a little bit tricky to travel through this material, because when he talks about north, he's not talking about the, like the top of a globe versus the bottom of the globe. In this system, north is the center of spheres. North is the direction of compression and higher potential. North centers planets and suns, and it's the center of the wave field. It's the center of the sphere. Did I say something wrong? PJ's laughing. And south is just away from center. So south is toward the edges of the cube. And moving from in either of those, moving from north to south or south to north represents a change in potential. As opposed to east and west, which traces the, it sort of traces the, well, it's 90 degrees from the inward and outward directions of north and south. It goes around the edges of, goes around the surfaces of spheres. And to travel along the east-west axis, there is no change in potential. So as the cloud floats in the sky, it's weightless. There's no weight registered because it's not changing. It's found its place. It's found its position. It's happy there. It's at home there. So as it travels, it's traveling weightlessly, and it's traveling along the quote unquote east-west direction.
I was laughing before because I just appreciate you a lot. So it wasn't anything wrong. There was something right. That's really helpful. I appreciate the how you synthesize this material. This material as well as raw and just so much esoteric or seemingly esoteric metaphysical material. That's really clarifying. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, PJ. Glad to hear that. And the other thing I want to, I don't know, this just pops to mind to share is that, this is a system of science. This is I've said this before, but this is applicable in an industrial scale. So all these phenomena he's describing of change in potential and all the geometry of how this all works, if we could understand it and then design our electrical systems, design how we interact with matter and produce matter through this understanding, he says we can literally transmute elements, and he did it in a laboratory. He proved it, and so it's no small thing. I really, I tend to think that this material, along with maybe some of those things we mentioned earlier, some of the anthroposophical and other systems of knowledge, that, have been around for a while, but are not well understood or practiced. It's the foundation of fourth density tech. It's the foundation of the technologies of the future. It's the technologies that don't require burning and exploding to harness matter. Harness energy. It's like working with the patterns of reality, God's patterns, and co-creating with them in a way that's not destructive. It's generative or regenerative. So
Yep.
It's pretty exciting. I really don't have a sense that I'll get into that kind of application, but it feels like the efforts, our efforts, my efforts, all of our efforts to like gain a fuller understanding of how the reality that we're embedded in actually works, will help usher in the possibilities that are available here, which is pretty incredible. So north is in towards centers of spheres, and south is out, and east and west spiral around 90 degrees to that inward outward direction. That's all I wanted to read through tonight. We could keep reading, or we could wrap, or we could return to BJ's comments about the direct experience of awareness. The floor is open.
I have something to say. So another way that all of those things feel connected to me, like Steiner and the other guy you mentioned, and the coiling thing on the stick that Natalie was talking about. There's that guy who I think was a Japanese scientist, Yamamoto, maybe, could be the wrong name, but the one who looked at pictures of crystals of water and how they were influenced by patterns of thought, feels super related to me. Like, it's a link between, those other scientists and like the experience of inquiry and direct sensing. And a family friend with her kids put a strawberry in a jar over here and a strawberry in a jar over here. And like her kids had been saying hurtful things to each other, and they wanted to see what happens when you say hurtful things to the strawberries. And so they put like, I hate you on this strawberry, and they put I love you on the other strawberry, or something like that. And in their house, in their experiment, the I hate you strawberry got like gnarly and covered in mold, and just got all like not evidently life-serving. And the other one just stayed looking like a strawberry for so long. It kind of shriveled and it kind of got a little bit mushy, but it was still bright, and it still looked so strawberry-ish for like 3 months or something amazing. And to me, it's like, oh, I'm so interested. I'm so fascinated to keep like looking at study, practice, to find how these two are connected, and how can we cultivate what's life-serving through our direct experience, through our sensing, through our feeling into what's, on the positive path, what's on the negative path, how do I learn about forgiveness? I am really excited about that. And yeah.
I just want to pop in and say that there is a guy named Yamamoto who's done work with water, but you're talking about Emoto, Dr. Emoto. Yeah, and his beautiful research.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll plug a little piece of this. I've said this before a few weeks ago, but what Walter Russell says about like what influences what, what gets created, is mind. What steers the formation of matter, and what steers the formation of, how light waves, come into motion and produce everything they produce, is mind. Mind precedes all matter. And the way that happens is when thinking takes place, it basically, like, I don't know if this is literal or not, but it impacts the three inner planes of the cube, what are called the inertial planes. The cube is bounded by six outer planes, but on the inside, if you bisect the cube along its three axes, you get the three inertial planes. And I think the inertial planes divide space-time from time-space, and thinking it impacts the inertial planes, creates a ripple, and the ripple sets into motion these dynamics that we're talking about today. So thought creates motion. It's always two. It's always in two directions simultaneously. Anyway, I thought of that when you're describing the experiment with the strawberries, BJ, because to think I hate you and to think I love you, those thoughts influence how, the fields of whatever's taking place in that. Go ahead, William.
Sorry, I just had a really strong flash to Ra and his talk about balancing for a case of patients find the opposing impatience. If thought is movement, as you have just proposed, then to still said movement or counter movement, finding that balance point by thinking or discovering the opposite seems to be a metaphysical mechanism for stilling thoughts in motion or in process. Does that make any sense?
It totally makes sense. That's a great insight. Mm-hmm.
I want to say something about that too. To me, that believing the thought, I hate you, and believing the thought, I love you, both are in some ways not true, because the thought itself is not personal. So again, it's like attaching the I to the thought. The I is not inherently connected to either thought. I love you, the thought may direct us more closely to our true nature. But anyway, part of what I get about the balancing exercise, through my experience of inquiry, is it balances having the experience of I hate you and I love you, and with the thought I hate you, without the thought I hate you, and with the thought I love you, without the thought I love you, actually directs us to the heart of creation, or the unmoving center, the unidentified, the prior to thought place, which is our true nature. So it's they equalize each other, and they take us to the still point. To take it back to Walter Russell, they take us to the still point that's prior to either movement. So that's exciting. I hope that my comments are meaningful to you all, or also happy if they're not. But I'm a little sensitive to the not being meaningful to you, and please feel free to give me feedback. I can, if they're not meaningful.
Go ahead, William.
So I just in the case of I love you and I hate you, I this image came up for me of both those conditions. If it was the equal I love you and the equal I hate you, then the I itself is the fulcrum point between the two. The I-ness is Yeah, as soon as you say is, it breaks down.
That's neat.
Is that completely out there?
No, that's awesome. I love that. One, the thing that comes to mind to tie this back to the material is potential, and that changing of potential. I love you, I hate you. I love you is like, I want to be closer to you. I want to move closer to you. I want to be close to you. I hate you is like, get away from me. I can't stand to be close to you. That's along the north-south, like that's a change in potential. I love you and I hate you are move us toward and away from the object of the love or the hate. It's a pressure change. It's a potential change. Creates a potential change.
Yeah, and in the same way, it draws back to what I was saying. Like, I love you moves me towards truth. Like, it moves me towards my true nature. It isn't itself my true nature, but it does move me towards. And there's a way that it feels so beautiful to be in the space of I love you. And again, it's ultimately in some way a distortion or illusory, because it's not ultimately true or something like that. It's still a telling.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling up at home right now. Okay.
That's so cute. Welcome home, BJ. Yeah, go ahead.
So just a little bit more on the I love you, I hate you thing. So if in the sense of I love you, we were to find it's clear that I love you and I hate you are juxtaposed tensions. If I were to think the thought or feel the I love you in the same feel I hate you in exactly the same proportion as the I love you, so completely equally identified with one another. So it's not just finding a feeling of hate versus a feeling of love. It's like that exact feeling of love. If we find that completely equally juxtaposed, I hate you, then there is just, at the same time, it's just I or something.
Totally. And then there's a paradox that like neither thought is true. Hi.
Hi.
And at the same time, when we rest into the I, like what I get is the mystical teachers point to like balancing the dissolving of positive and negative together leaves only the positive, because as soon as the I is all that there is, there's like everything. Okay, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. Awareness is nothing that it's aware of. So the I doesn't connect to anything, but as soon as there is just the I, there's also the experience of oneness. So I is paradoxically not anything that it was aware of, but also it is everything that it was aware of at the same time, which leaves only the experience of connectedness, which is only the experience of I love you, which is fascinating. So like the dissolving of I love you into I hate you leaves only I love you. The dissolving of positive into negative leaves only positive. Fascinating.
We're in the deep end.
Yeah.
Of the philosophical pool. Oh, it's not able to. Yeah. Go ahead, William.
Or is what's left just love?
Mm-hmm.
Not I and you anymore, just love.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Just to come back to the material, because it's floated off a little bit, and just a qualitative sort of thing. I notice when I'm reading this, as I read along and these principles kind of bend my my very bedrock of kind of what is and how things piece together, I can kind of feel dizzy. Like, you know, if a circle suddenly becomes a line, or something that I've just taken for a given is like, oh, and then oh, and then oh. It's like, I get that sensation a bit like when you look at a fractal and you kind of like, whoa, kind of get that giddiness from falling into it, sort of thing. And there was just one note of very little consequence. I correct me if I'm wrong, but Walter Russell said a while ago that we're yet to discover the east and west poles. Like, that was a very exciting thought to me, like to start to consider east and west, you know, obviously as these very real things, as opposed to just this lateral in between of the magnetic north and south. And then just also you, Aaron, you were talking about north, south, east, west, and how he may have picked them arbitrarily. I don't know if what I'm about to say is right, wrong, or otherwise, but I get this sense that north, south, east, and west might be almost elemental, like they're things. Oh, wait, no, that's probably exactly what they're not. But they're kind of like elemental forces in north, south, east, west, and they have these. No, I can't do that. They're a little bit elemental, perhaps, like elements.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, they're archetypal, or they're, I mean, you're onto something. I don't think we found the right word to describe it, but I mean, in a way, like northward is always homeward. It's truthward, you know. I mean, he could have said inward instead of north, and I think it might have been more helpful, but you know, inward is also problematic for other reasons. So he chose north, but yeah, these directions are universal. The universally,
Yeah,
applicable.
and it feels like it might. It seems like it might be useful to kind of think of like northness and westness and eastness and southness, like, and develop a conception of what these things are. It's really cool.
Yeah, perfect, beautiful. Natalie raised her hand, but I want to say one thing in response to that. Ra's teachings of the archetypical mind are the deepest, you know, like I think they're kind of like certainly the most advanced metaphysics of the law of one. But Ra teaches them so that we can learn the basic building blocks of our mind, of our shared mind. And if we're able to learn them well enough that we can like take them on in the right situation, we can make maximum use of reality, basically. So it's very useful. You can do magic, you can heal people, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can also fuck people up if you're on negative path. And I feel like what Walter Russell's system articulates is an analog of those archetypes, but for physical reality. There are, instead of 22 archetypes of the mind, there are 18 dimensions of physical reality that he describes. And if you can learn how to interact with those dimensions, those poles, these patterns, same thing. You can like have profound capacity to co-create with physical reality. And I think it like pairs with the archetypical mind. It's like Walter Russell teaches the archetypical body or something. The building blocks of all bodies.
Super take this or leave this, but it just came up and it might be kind of funky. When you speak of the 22 archetypal minds and then the 18, I feel like there are 4 things conspicuously missing. And there might be a north, south, east, and west to those 18 things or something.
Totally. Yeah. Maybe. Natalie, what did you want to say?
Well, just kind of in response to William's suggestion that those directions are elemental, model that I hold that's really common is that the direction of the north goes with the element of earth, which is matter, you know? So that makes sense to me. And then south is fire, which is like movement and essence. And so I could overlay my understanding of those elemental aspects to this conversation. And then east is air and west is water. And so, yeah, I just liked that.
Yeah, that maps nicely.
Putting that on.
Yeah, fire is the element that like takes matter apart and makes it more, it disperses it, sends it out towards space. That's cool, which is the south direction.
Yep. More to know about east and west, I guess.
Yeah.
Air and water.
Yep. All right, well, it's 8:31, so we've run through our time, and that was enjoyable and stimulating, and you portaled in here, and all of a sudden you're in physicality for me, but not for them. They see us together and have fun. Good
No,
job.
that was quite the magic trick.
Thanks, you all. Thanks for showing up and being here and diving in together.
Have a good night.
Yeah, awesome.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Good day.
Bye-bye.